This is one of the most important events in the year, the presentation of the budget speech, and all eyes are obviously on the finance minister, on the government as well. And we know that there was a lot of disagreement. This is the first budget under the government of national unity. So, that again has generated a lot more interest in terms of what is this budget going to deliver. Just before we get into specifics, just your overall thoughts or just a brief overview on the budget.
So this was always going to be a difficult balancing act for the government of national unity, because essentially it is the first pieces of legislation, it's more than one, the money bills, they become law. And so the time frames for putting together these pieces of legislation is very different to, say, a new health act or whatever else they might be. But because you need to pass it every year, it has to happen annually. And so it's very interesting to see how difficult the negotiations around raising revenue, taxes, where the money is going to come from, and spending, what are they going to spend it on, has garnered quite a lot of contestation and resistance. And we saw that still today, even though the budget has been tabled, we see that the Democratic Alliance, a member of the government, the GNU, has not spoke out publicly saying that they do not support this proposal that has been tabled.
Yes, but always, when one looks at the budget, there's always this delicate balancing act. Where is the money going to be spent, or how the money is going to be spent, where the money is going to be coming from. And the key question here is, how does one actually make up for a shortfall? Because there is no ways that, those days where we've seen a budget surplus are actually long gone. And I can't recall when last I've ever seen a budget surplus. So again, we're expecting a shortfall. And once again, key questions that are going to be asked is, where is this money going to be coming from?
Well, interestingly, they're actually trying to build a budget surplus. So since 2012, the fiscal policy that we have been pursuing under then the ANC and now possibly the government of national unity has been one of fiscal consolidation. So drawing down expenditure so that we don't have huge deficits and can create what is called a primary surplus. And so Treasury, if you take out the cost of Eskom, which they've done, some creative accounting, then they are trying to create these surpluses. And so they were talking about, creating a primary surplus of about 0.5% of GDP this year, up to almost 1% of GDP next year. So the plan is to create a surplus. The question is this the right policy given the country's growth, stagnant growth? We haven't seen growth since 2012. For example, there's enormous need in terms of high unemployment, inequality. We've got children that are stunted, which means they're not getting enough food. So hunger is highly prevalent amongst our communities. So it's absolutely critical that we go back to basics and ask, what is the primary purpose of the government's budget? Why do we have it, and what is it for, and what can it do for us? And there's a huge amount of contestation over what the role of government's budget is in the economy, in terms of addressing growth, in terms of addressing poverty. And in my institute, we're interested not only in poverty, but in inequality. So making sure that we have more equal societies where well-being is taken into consideration. So we're not just keeping people kind of barely surviving, but actually thriving.
Yes, obviously these are important questions, and these are absolutely critical questions at a time like this, but also against an economy that is struggling. And you mentioned Eskom. We know Eskom is going to be the elephant in the room for a very, very long time still to come, until we sort out our problems the mere fact that this is the first budget under a government of national unity, how relevant is it?
It's hugely relevant for our democracy. It's going to be the first test of our ability to manage coalition governance. And we've already seen with the first kind of non-budget that they didn't table it. They couldn't come to agreement. They've now been willing to table it, which means that big test now sits with Parliament. It's the first time that Parliament really gets to scrutinize the budget, because before, when we had a dominant party system under the ANC, they were pretty much guaranteed that whatever they tabled, they could be grumbling here or there, but they could put a party whip on it and get the votes through. Now, that is not the case. It is not clear that there is a majority that is behind this budget. And so it is going to be it's super important for all parties involved to show their political maturity and to come to the table to say, what is it that we need in order to make sure that we pass a budget that we will deliver for our constituencies, be it political party constituencies or just the broader South African population. So it is an absolutely critical time. I think many researchers will be writing about this moment going forward, because it is historical, it's unprecedented. I've been using the term that, we're in uncharted waters, because we have to pull out, the Money Bills Amendment Act, because our parliament has the power to amend the budget. So not only can it reject the budget, but it can also suggest amendments. And we have the Parliamentary Budget Office, which is meant to provide the capacity for Parliament to be able to do that. So their role will be scrutinized and tested. So, the spotlight now really does turn onto Parliament and seeing what a Parliament of coalition looks like and how it acts in being able to pass legislation, such as these money bills, such as the budget.
Well, Thokozile, we're going to put you on hold. I need to pay some bills, so we're going for a quick ad break. We'll be back.
Salam Media, your spiritual companion this Ramadan.
Shimmer, sparkle, captivate. Nothing less than a masterpiece. Droplets of gold inspires precious design. Platinum bursts with intricate freshness, and every pure diamond becomes more than just a girl's best friend. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, where timeless dreams become a reality. Come to us. We tailor-make designer gold, platinum, and diamond jewelry. Trade in or remodel your old gold. Clad yourself with classy name-branded watches. We offer insurance valuation and free zakat calculation. Visit us at 534 Ridge Road, Overport, or call 031 208 9142. Voda Gold Gem Jewelers, manufacturers of fine gold and diamond jewelry.
Imagine a world where every child feels loved, secure, and cared for. At Beit Halima Saadia Orphanage, we are not just providing a roof over their heads, we're giving orphan children a chance for a brighter future. For just 1,500 rands a month or 18,000 rands a year, you can sponsor an orphan and transform their life. Your contribution covers essentials like food, clothing, tuition, therapy, and more, ensuring they grow in a nurturing, supportive environment. Any donation is accepted, as well as daily scheduled donations. EFT directly into our account. Beit Halima Saadia Orphanage, First National Bank, account number 6313-1080-078, branch code 250737, section 18A registered. Take the step today. Contact Sister Nazarene at 083-653-5669 or email info@bhscycc.co.za.
This Ramadan, make a conscious choice, sip for change, and support Palestine Drinks Africa. With every can, you help end the genocide and stand in solidarity with Palestine. Choose between our original or sugar-free options, available in a case of 24. Every sip is a step towards justice. Every purchase a powerful message of unity and support for the Palestinian cause. Contact 082 888 1440 or 082 7739 556 today and be part of the change. Palestine Drinks Africa. Sip for change. Liberty for everyone.
Our brothers and sisters in Palestine are enduring unimaginable hardships. Ashraful aid teams are on the ground, delivering crucial aid to those in need. But we can't do it alone. Palestine is suffering and they need your help. Your support can make a world of difference. Visit www.ashrafulaid.org today and donate to bring hope, relief, and healing to those who are in need.
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
Well, the time is just gone 21 minutes past 4 as we continue with our broadcast this afternoon on the Iftar Drive, and we are taking a look ahead at the budget, and it's going to be quite interesting to see, Thokozile, what the minister comes up with in terms of the revised budget, considering there was just this huge controversy when the budget was originally supposed to be presented. And once again, in the same breath, perhaps if you could just, expand on the ideologies of these parties in the government of national unity versus the ANC, because clearly there are certain conflicting ideologies from a political perspective, how they see the economy as well, and how is this possibly likely to impact on the outcome of the budget?
Definitely. So, I mean, interestingly enough, the ANC's fiscal policies traditionally have been quite orthodox or also called neoliberal. So in that sense, there's a kind of sense in which the state should be small, it should be lean, and that's why we hear a lot about trying to control the public wage bill, bringing down the number of public servants, shrinking the public wage, the entire budget, essentially making space for the private sector, and this emphasis on public-private partnerships. So traditionally the ANC has been quite neoliberal and has pushed through austerity budgeting, especially since 2012. We've seen fiscal consolidation being the main kind of goal of trying to reduce the size of the state, increase the number of public-private partnerships, the delivery of services through public-private partnerships. So interestingly enough, in terms of the biggest partner in the GNU in relation to the Democratic Alliance, there hasn't really been that much difference, other than the DA questioning the Black economic empowerment as a policy, wanting to talk about meritocracy. They see a much greater role for the private sector. But interestingly enough, when we saw the non-budget, so the budget that wasn't tabled, with the 2 percentage point VAT hike, it was the DA that came out, along with some members of the ANC and other smaller GNU parties, was that they didn't support the VAT hike. But nobody said that they necessarily didn't support the goal of what is called fiscal consolidation. So this aim to have a primary balance, that hasn't come under fire. Whereas your parties in the opposition, like the economic freedom fighters, they have been targeting, the kind of broader discussion around the role of the budget and the role of the state. So, giving funding to the state to deliver public services and public goods as public services, so education, health, water, energy, public transport. So those are the kinds of things that should be provided, free of charge, if not free of charge, highly subsidized, because they're public goods. They're what gives energy to an economy. It enables people to move around. Education is a driver of economic development. That's not even argued. Many countries, education is free. You don't have to pay fees for it, and the majority of South Africans depend on no-fee schools. Health as well. We have a good system of providing primary health services free of charge. But there is this move by the DA, for example, and other more conservative parties to have that all stripped down and privatized, and that there's somehow the private sector is best placed to provide these services, and that we should pay user fees in order to access those services. But this doesn't work, given our high unemployment, given the pressures on households, on families. We just don't have the resources to be able to privatize our economy. So what did the minister table today? Well, he tabled a kind of balancing budget in the end. It was one in which there was an acknowledgement, which is absolutely critical, that we have these spending pressures, that we have pressures on our health, on our education, in terms of personnel, in terms of quality of services, in terms of need, that we have a high proportion of unemployment, of people not who are dependent on grants, who are therefore dependent on no-fee paying services, public services like education, health, and so forth. Water, electricity as well. So free basic services which local government provides. So yes, it's an exciting. It's important from that perspective that there is an acknowledgement of these spending needs. But what they decided to do in order to meet these needs is they still hiked value-added tax by 0.5 percentage points. And did some tinkering with personal income tax, so there won't be an inflationary relief for next year on those who earn enough to normally get a relief from an inflation adjustment. That's not going to happen. So they've still gone for value-added tax. They will also increase it again by 0.5% next year. He did say that increase is subject to potential changes this year if they see the change in income. What is encouraging is that they've given more money to SARS to be able to make sure that they are capacitated to make sure that everybody who should be paying tax is paying tax, and that could also resolve some of the shortfalls. So they have tried to plug the gap, and they have tried to listen to the public outcry on the 2 percentage point increase on value-added tax, which the average to poor South African household would not have been able to afford.
Yes, but also I think, there's just so much one can actually do locally. And I hear what you're saying, even in terms of capacitating SARS and the like, in terms of, improving collections. But more importantly, it's how the money is spent, number one. But also what is also important to understand is we are also impacted by global dynamics that are playing out. And this is now the area of uncertainty that we are actually faced with, because we know that we are riddled with debt servicing costs. We've got huge debt in this country at this point in time. And what we need is obviously to develop the economy. We need infrastructure development. We need all of that in this country at this point in time. And that, again, is going to come from investment. The question is, where is this investment going to come, particularly when we are in a very uncertain global political climate, and we see how the dynamics have been playing out in the United States of America, Donald Trump withholding funding, doing all sorts of things. So all of that put together, again, tells us that, putting a budget together at this point in time, sticking to the budget, working to that budget, is no easy task.
Absolutely. And I mean, just to clarify around debt, because often debt is made the bogeyman for cutting public services, and cutting down on much needed health personnel, teachers, and so forth. So just to clarify, that debt in and of itself is not bad in a growing economy. So without going into too much of the technical detail, the most important thing you need to know is that our debt in South Africa is actually not that bad. There are some countries with 170, Japan is over 200% of GDP. We're sitting at around 76% of GDP. So we're not by any means, need to worry about our debt. Our debt is also primarily rand denominated, so it is local. It's predominantly local rand denominated debt, which also means that we are better off than, say, other developing countries or emerging countries like Ghana or Kenya, where their debt is predominantly in US dollars, and so if there's a crash, they really suffer. So our debt, is only of concern in a context of low growth, and that is our context of low growth. You asked where the investment would come from. So we've been doing research with a number of economists showing that if we go back to some old school economists and thinking around the need for government and the state to step in the context of a slump. So we are in a slump, and John Maynard Keynes said it is the boom, not the slump, when you do austerity. It's the time to save. So you don't do austerity in a slump. So we shouldn't be thinking about a primary balance when we need to boost our economy. So in some ways, our budget speaks a little bit to this, because they've set aside about 1 trillion rand for infrastructure. The problem is they're hoping that the private sector will deliver this 1 trillion rand worth of investment. And so what we actually need is state spending to account for, infrastructure development. And our research also looks at what kind of infrastructure spending will bring about economic growth. And the research shows that when you invest in houses, in hospitals, in clinics, in schools, and you think of the public sector wage bill not as a cost, but as an investment, then you will see much needed growth, because we have unemployment. We have so much untapped capacity in this country, and the state can step in. The private sector is not going to do it. What we've seen historically in many countries is that when the state steps in and starts building roads, starts building buildings, and starts investing in infrastructure, then the private sector comes in and plays its part. So, and we have to get Transnet up and running. We have to get Eskom delivering electricity. We have to get our ports enabling us to export goods and services. We've got to get our water infrastructure right so that people can open the tap and water comes out. And that investment, unfortunately, just in terms of the way the economics works, has to be done by the state. And this idea that the private sector will deliver these things is problematic when it comes to public goods like water, like education, like health and social development. The other thing about this that is important is this kind of infrastructure spending is also green infrastructure spending. It's green jobs. So it's not, investing in a big, expensive coal guzzling power station, but by investing in a school teacher who then participates in the economy, buys a house, sends their children to school, buys things, gets involved. Those kinds of things generate demand in the economy and then spur further, investment. So having people employed, having people in good buildings, this, has a far more sustainable, environmentally sustainable mechanism than if we just invest in big white elephant type infrastructure projects. So when we talk about infrastructure, we have to be very specific about what we're talking about. And so that I would like to see that 1 trillion actually being channeled through our social services, through our education, health, hospitals, water, Transnet, Eskom, making sure that all of those entities are well resourced and well run.
Well, Thoko, we could go on and on and on, but unfortunately, time is of the essence. But we really do appreciate you taking time out and unpacking the budget for us or with us this afternoon right here on Salam Media. And I'm sure there's just so much more that we can actually talk about and unpack, but I'm sure at some point in time we will obviously get you onto another broadcast, because I'm sure this is not the end. Now that the budget is done and dusted, there's still a lot more that we need to focus on economically. And I'm sure the work that you do, the research that you put out would be very, very useful to us and also to our listeners and viewers at Salam Media. So all the best to you. Please take care.
Thank you so much.
Thokozile Makondo joining us this afternoon. And with that, we're going to go for a break. And it's our Voices of Palestine segment together with the Palestine Solidarity Alliance. And this afternoon, we have the pleasure of Manal Tamimi. Stay with us.